Welcome, everybody. My name's Herbert, and this is Tesla Today. We've been seeing the stock rising consistently ever since the shareholder meeting last week. Let's talk about how the story has changed, and what people are thinking about the brand and the products, and what has happened for Tesla in terms of, is it still being an EV company? Is it now being seen as a bot company or even an AI company? So I've got Randy Kirk here with us. Welcome, Randy. Thank you for joining me. You are an Uber bull, and you've been really focusing quite a bit on kind of your thoughts of what's happened to the narrative. So I'm quite excited to hear your thinking on this.
I'm excited to try to make sense of it.
So why don't we start with that first question? In your mind, what has changed with the narrative about Tesla? Or you're assuming it is, but what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, this could be completely wrong. Okay, let's make sure that nobody knows the future and nobody, even the top pundits, get it wrong all the time. The ones that we trust the most, just about the time that we think that they're always right, then they get it wrong and they're completely off. So everything that I'm talking about here is just based on over 50 years of watching the market, being involved in the market, and in particular following Tesla, and for many, many years being right on top of Apple, like the same way I am Tesla today. So, and I know that a lot of the folks in the community are the same way, that they were big Apple fans and now they're big Tesla fans. And so we can see some of the patterns repeating. So my thesis begins with the idea that Tesla is a story stock. I think it'd be hard to get anybody to argue with me on that one. It is a story stock. There's a big, big story. It may be the biggest story stock of all time, because it's not only a story stock with regard to the products, and with regard to the products in terms of the entire world economy and even sociology of the future, but it's also a story stock with regard to the owner. I mean, he's a story into himself, maybe one of the biggest stories of all time, probably the biggest story of all time for a
Mhm.
CEO. He would be right up there with Rockefeller and Carnegie and some of these icons of the past who did bring their personality to the table. So anyway, so we got a story stock. Well, a story stock only does, and a growth stock and a high risk stock. That's how it was perceived up until 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. We were going, then all of a sudden the stock started taking off because I think people were less interested in the risk. They were more interested in the opportunity. They were like, okay, I'll take a little risk because you know what? I don't want to get left out of this one. So, I don't want to get left out of the next. In fact, they were
Mhm.
calling it, I'm looking for the next Tesla. It was such a big deal that people were looking for another Tesla. But then the economy went a different way. The inflation thing came in, and all of a sudden the entire stock market went risk off. And the stock market has been risk off now for I'm going to blow the timing. I want to say it's for 9 months. Maybe it's longer than 9 months. The market has been risk off. The market dropped precipitously, and everybody goes, "Oh my gosh, what's happened to Tesla?" Oh, oh my gosh, what happened to the market?
Yeah.
And then if you look at the Dow was down this much, the Nasdaq was down this much, and then if you looked at other story stocks or other high risk growth stocks, they were down as much as Tesla, 70%, 80%. The kinds of things that Kathy Wood likes. Her ARK Invest. All of a sudden, she went from being the number one smartest person on Wall Street to being the GOAT. Well, they can't say GOAT anymore because now that's good. But anyway, she went to being everybody's saying, what happened to Kathy? And oh, she was never that good. She just can do it in a bull market. But the truth is, when it's a risk-off environment, people all of a sudden are looking for, where can I put my money that I can be sure that I'm not going to lose it? And what's that been for the last 4 or 5, 6 months? It's been bonds, bonds, bonds. It's been treasuries. It's been money markets. Any place I can go and get 3, 4, 5% that I know is going to be good for years and years and years. So as a result, we've got the bond market at these lows, the 10 years and the 2 years at these lows, compared to what the Fed would like them to be at. They'd like them to be higher. So, okay, what happened? What happened in the last week? Well, the market started to inch up, the Standard & Poor's in particular, and the Nasdaq. In fact, the Nasdaq right now is outrunning the Dow almost every day. And also, all the Kathy Wood stocks, all the really
Mhm.
risky high growth stocks, the ones that have massive potential, but also have some risk associated with them. All of those have been going up even more than the NASDAQ. But one that's been going up the most has been Tesla. And in particular, on Monday,
Mhm.
the Tesla killed it, just absolutely killed it. What's going on? What happened over the last 10 days? And that's the rest of the thesis for me. All of the risk and uncertainty came out of Tesla. All you could hear about from even top bulls like Gary Black and Ross Gerber, even top bulls. Ross was going on television and talking down Tesla, talking down Elon,
Yeah.
wanted to be on the board of directors because they were doing such a horrible job. And of course, we were all, slapping back and saying, "No way, Gary, that's not what we want." But the truth of the matter was, you have this amazing shift in the narrative months and months ago because of the Twitter purchase, because Elon sold shares, because Elon was saying all these things, because he wasn't paying attention to the company. Yeah, go down the list. There's more. And then of course in January, dropping the prices, missing the numbers, not his numbers, missing Wall Street's numbers, and then missing his own numbers with regard to margins. All of that was negative, 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 negative. Every one of those negatives has now been reversed. So when you take the risk out of a company that is as foundationally strong as Tesla, who has 22 billion in the bank, no debt, who's been growing 35 to 50% a year and more, year after year after year, who nobody is saying that they won't continue to grow, nobody's saying that they won't continue to grow profits, then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of folks that are going to go, you know what? I've got a bunch of cash sitting on the sideline. I can get a real chance here at a big, big win with almost zero risk. So I think that's what happened. What I said over the weekend when I was predicting all this, I did two different videos on this already, is that what we will see now is the momentum will start to be part of the factor. So people say, oh, it went up 8 points on Monday. Well, I don't want to miss it on Tuesday and then Wednesday. Now, does that mean there won't be a pullback at some point? Oh, no, there'll be people taking profits. I can even tell you it'll be Squawk and some other people.
Mhm.
For those of you who are not following Twitter, he announces his buys and his sells, and he's in
Mhm.
and out. He's a day trader. So I know who they will be. There'll be people that will be pulling out, figuring that there will be another dip where they can jump back in. And that's probably true, but that's almost impossible to predict. If I could predict that, I could live here in Hawaii all the time.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the biggest narrative change that happened? Of course, it looks like that the shareholder meeting was a big turning point. You can feel it in the Tesla community. You can see it in the analysts that you're talking about. The big one for me was obviously Elon saying, "I'm back, CEO of Tesla. I'm going to be here." And then, of course, he then said, "I'm going to make sure that there's a lot of work to make Tesla become an AI company." So I want to talk about that in depth. Tesla is an AI company, but before we do that, tell me more about the narrative change. So him saying that he's going to be here. What else did you hear that you thought was really good news that was much more concrete?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that I could really slice it and dice it because what you're looking at is any negative,
Yeah.
any uncertainty is what the market hates. Any risk that they can't figure out which way it might go. If you've got a risk and you can put some numbers on it, like, well, this is 90%
Yeah.
chance it won't happen and 10% chance it will, or vice versa, then the risk is okay. But when you don't know which way the risk is going to go, that's when the market gets nervous. So on a week ago Thursday, the announcement was made of the new Twitter CEO. And the stock bounced after hours, I think four or
Mhm.
5 points, 4 or 5%, 4 or 5 points, I can't remember which. But then the stock went immediately down the next day
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the Wall Street Journal came out and said, oh, Elon's going to step down as CEO of Tesla too. And you could just see what happened. It was just boom, boom. So all of a sudden you had one risk came off and another risk, even maybe a bigger risk, came on. So otherwise, the stock might have started to really take off at that point. But all of these things have been contributing because Tesla has been running ahead of the market for a couple of weeks. And you could just begin to see kind of a sense out there that people were getting that this is a once in a lifetime deal. And it's all, not only is it a once in a lifetime deal, but the risk pieces are starting to go away. And I think, yes, I would agree with you, Elon saying, "Are you kidding? I'm in. I'm here. I'm going. And I'm going to be a big part of it." And especially with regard to AI and all the rest. But seeing the price increases was the beginning of it. That was when you first began to see Tesla outrun the market a bit, was the second price increase of $250, because that told the world this is not a, the future is not price cut after price cut after price cut. It's not a matter of getting into a price war with all the other companies. No, Tesla is making these decisions every day based on the information they have that day. And then Elon explaining it so well at the meeting last week, explaining it so well as to how the dealers have always done this at the dealer level. They change the price from the one person who comes in the door to the next person who comes in the door. And so Elon is saying, hey, ours is more transparent and ours is more predictable. And we're going to change it based on the data that we have on a daily basis. So I think that was the beginning. The beginning was the pricing. And then when he said, I'm in, and also we're going to try advertising, I think those two things were
Sure.
really dispositive, in addition to the AI thing, which I think we need to spend a lot of time on.
Okay. So I do agree that the narrative does feel like it's changed. It could be just a temporary thing, like a short term thing, right? So, like you said, there was all this negative that was hitting down. At least now they've addressed the negatives, the price cuts, the volume, the ability to have a floor, whether or not they're going to advertise. Elon, his time and effort, which is I think the big one, right? The Twitter CEO and so forth. So now what will take this further? What will continue this momentum? What will solidify this, right? So there's this potential for a recession. Elon said that there's a coming recession, but we're going to weather the storm. And I think people do feel and they do understand at this point that, Elon Tesla is going to do just fine this year. I don't think anybody has concern about that. But then how do you get that momentum going? So you're an auto company, you don't quite yet show a lot of energy, although we've been reporting in these shows that the energy will show up by the end of this year, like big time. Um, and then they showed the bots. They kind of keep talking about FSD, and then now they're starting to talk about AI. What do you think is going to need to happen for this to continue this momentum?
Yeah, so I think on the positive side, I do think that energy is becoming more and more certain.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
do think that after the second quarter earnings, people will start putting that into their numbers in a significant way. But the positive thing, besides AI, which I think takes way more discussion, but the positive thing that happened that I think is really important is the robots. The Optimus is not like energy. Optimus is not even like AI. Optimus is not even like insurance. Optimus is sexy. Okay, it's almost as sexy as the cars. Might even be sexier than the cars to a certain group of folks out there. And what we saw, what we physically got to see that day in terms of the video, in terms of Elon wearing an Optimus t shirt, in terms of him talking about it as a 9 billion unit business, I believe that a lot of people in the audience were going,
Mm,
this is serious and it's coming and it's not that far away. Even if it's 2 years away, that wouldn't be far away. Okay. So for an investor to say, I need to get in on this. So I think that part will continue to start ramping up every time there's another showing of Optimus, and it's showing like it's getting closer and closer, and that could blow the entire roof off the building once there's a clear cut video of Optimi doing real work.
yeah, I guess what I'll push back a little bit on that one. I think that existing investors like me and all of us who are watching this, agreed. We got super excited. We're very, very confident and bullish about the bot. But I think the regular investor, I don't think that they are yet going to factor in the bot into their investment thesis at this point today. I think it needs a little bit more, sales, a little bit more visuals of that. It's starting to, but I just don't think that that's why the stock went up this week. Not that you said that, but that's what's going to move things forward. What can actually
Well,
have the most impact?
let
Okay.
me just back up one more time. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that anybody's putting it in their numbers yet,
Hmm.
but there's a piece of any stock like Tesla that isn't just about the numbers. There's a piece of it that's about, oh my gosh.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the oh my gosh factor can never be left out. If you remember back in the day with Apple, when they came out with the what do you call it, the app store, nobody went, oh my gosh. 6 people went, oh my gosh, they could see it, and then 12 people a year later, and then 24 the next year. It took 3 years
Yeah.
before people understood what was going on. With Optimus, it's not going to take 3 years for people to
Yeah.
figure out what's going on. It's going to be something they can visualize and they can imagine the astronomical potential. So therefore, it becomes an, oh my gosh, I need to be part of that.
Yeah. I, I agree with you. Of course, that's why I invest. Lots of us invest because of that, but just the average Joe. In fact, let's get to AI, which is the
Sure.
weirdest thing, right? AI today, that's the story. Everybody wants to call themselves an AI company. Companies that have AI attached to it, their stock is rising. And so let me play a couple clips. The first one is a CNBC clip talking about AI and why and which companies are part of AI.
I want to show you where forward PEs were then versus where they are now for what we would call hot tech, right? The Qualcomms, the Yahoos, the Ciscos. Look at those forward PEs in very early, we're talking January of 2000. 192 times forward for Qualcomm, 739 times for Yahoo, 134 times forward for Cisco. Pull out a little bit and you will see where the AI quote unquote stocks are today. Alphabet's 22 times, Microsoft is 31. Okay, Nvidia's 63, Amazon's 76, and Meta's almost 20. I'm not suggesting by saying this or showing any of our viewers this that today's valuations for these stocks are justified. But
Yeah. So, that's just basically talking about the hot thing right now, AI. And of course, Tesla's not in that list. Tesla's not in that list, which is weird. And then Jeff Lutz, put this tweet out. Maybe Elon Musk can ask David Faber why CNBC doesn't recognize Tesla as an AI company when they're shipping the closest functioning real world AI to date. And then, of course, Elon replied, saying, even the AI community doesn't understand. And then Jeff said, agreed. What's the best way to drive that understanding? Now, the good news about that was after that happened, there was he actually had a chance to talk to CNBC, and this is what he said.
We will have a launch event and we'll explore the issues in more detail. But I should say that and I mentioned this at the shareholder meeting, that Tesla has actually tremendous capability in real-world AI.
Yes.
In fact, it is very far ahead of anyone.
I know people actually on Twitter prior to our interview were saying, he never gets asked about how advanced his AI is at Tesla. You always talk about the other names.
Tesla AI is, like I said, it's like, I'm not even sure who's second, frankly.
Why is that? What are people not understanding about what you have, and why are we talking so much about ChatGPT and generative AI at OpenAI and what Microsoft's going to be able to do with it, and not about Tesla?
I don't know. I mean, people do talk about it online. I think Tesla will have sort of a ChatGPT moment. Maybe if not this year, I'd say no later than next year.
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. You're going to have a
sort of ChatGPT moment.
Oh, you will. In terms of suddenly it will.
Yeah, suddenly 3 million cars will be able to drive themselves with no one.
Right. It goes back to that. Right.
Yeah, and then 5 million cars, and then 10 million cars.
Okay, so I was screaming. I've been repeating this story quite a bit because it was really a big deal when he talked about Tesla becoming a Chat GPT moment, and I had a tweet that I said 2 weeks ago that this might happen. FSD, there's a realization at some point that Tesla is an AI company, that FSD does work and it's inevitable and it's going to happen. So why isn't Tesla being seen as an AI company? Uh, and what really got me excited, what I think changed the narrative, not changed the narrative, but I'm a bull. I love Tesla so much. But the moment that I was so happy was when he said, I'm going to stay as CEO. And then he said, there's so much to do with AI and that I'm going to have to see it through. There's a lot of thorny issue. I'm going to have to see it through. So that told me a couple things. One is that AI is going to be in Tesla because we know that they've been focused on real world AI, vision AI, general AI, they called it. But it was like hard to know. But then he also talked about Truth GPT and creating a separate company for it. And I thought, okay, that's going to be the competitor to Chat GPT. Is the efforts going to move there? But for him to say it's going to be in Tesla, and that means it's going to take a long time. This isn't going to be the next 3 months and he's gone, moving on to the next thing. This is a long term effort, and he's going to make Tesla an AI company and make Tesla be known as an AI company. And he did his first step there. At CNBC interview, he started talking about it. He's going to start talking about it more. This conversation's happening. And so as people realize that Tesla is, what did he say? I can't even, something about how far away they are from being ahead of everybody. Of course, that's a little bit boasting, but I tell you, AI is a big deal. And the world kind of understands what AI means now. And so every company's trying to attach AI. But here's Tesla, been doing it for 5, 10 years. And they've got a supercomputer, they've got neural networks, they've got all these robots on the streets capturing all this data. They are ahead. They just need to tell the story. So, what's your reaction when you saw that?
Yeah, well, first of all, of course, Elon has the chops. Okay, I mean, he started AI. Whatever, I'm sorry, I forget the name of it all the time. The Chat GPT. He started the company,
OpenAI.
uh, OpenAI. He started the company multiple years ago. Put up $50 million. I thought it was 100, but he's now saying 50. Put up $50 million. His entire purpose was to keep it from getting out of control, making sure that there was regulations and ways to manage it. Wanted to do it as a public service. Wanted it to be it was a charitable organization, and then all of a sudden, of course, it's now a for profit, and that worries him and concerns him a lot. So you can be sure he's going to be spending a lot of time trying to find a way to hem that in. Uh, Hopefully, a lot of that's within the Tesla world. Maybe some of it will be over in the Twitter world, and both places need it. Obviously, the Twitter world needs to have some kind of of the the latest AI going over there as well. So, but why isn't Tesla recognized in that way? Well, we get back to what's sexy. What's useful. What is ever? I mean, I don't know what percentage of the population, but I'm going to say everybody I know has
Hmm.
tested
Yeah.
some form of Chat GPT, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now they're testing the other versions, the Bing and the Google and all the different ones. And dozens of people that I know watched that entire Google demonstration last week. It was fascinating. All the ways now that you can use these AI systems and all the plugins that are there and coming, and you go, oh my gosh, I mean, what a tool. It's super valuable. And then in addition, what's it going to do to jobs? So that becomes a whole nother thing that has to be discussed, which brings it right back to headlines again every single day. Not only headlines in the press, if you will, whatever the press is today, but headlines in your community, whoever you're hanging out with. When I was flying here a couple of days ago, the guy that I'm sitting next to, that's what we talked about half of the trip.
Mhm.
What's going to happen to the jobs, and who's ahead, and which system are you using? Do you like Bard better, or do you like ChatGPT better? I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. It's very sexy, very interesting, very futuristic, very amazing, like it will be when you can get into a Tesla and it'll take you to your destination with no steering wheel. I mean, of course, but it won't. I'm sorry, it still won't rise to the level of what just happened with ChatGPT, because it'll only be 3 million cars. It won't be 150 million people in the United States alone, probably, that have already tested some form of this new AI. So, yes, I think Tesla can begin to move towards being recognized for what they are, which is the leader in AI. but it might take another product, and one of those products would be the robot. If I see the robot working, and part of the way that the robot is working, part of the way that Optimus is working, is I say, "Hey, Optimus, would you screw in that bolt over there? Would you please put the bolt on that, put the bolt in that hole, and it's not tightened enough." And the robot says, "Well, I don't want to over tighten it." And you go, "No, I understand you don't want to over tighten it, but right now it's too loose." And the bot goes, "Well, okay, but how will I know? What exactly should I? How how can I be sure that I'm not over tightening it?" You start seeing a robot have that kind of conversation while he's doing the work. Oh, that'll maybe come up to the level that we need in order
Mhm.
to show that Tesla is way ahead. And I believe that that's not unrealistic at all, based on the conversations I've been having with ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's actually a very, very good example of something that might rise above. I don't think I do think that that FSD itself can actually still be recognized even when you don't have millions of people using it. I think that the videos alone would be enough to make people understand that it's inevitable, that robotaxi is inevitable. Therefore, if I'm an investor, I'm going to start investing in Tesla because I can see that this is going to be, you know, just wonky in terms of the revenue that they're going to create. They're going to be able to change automobile forever. When Elon talks about it being, what is it, 5 times the greatest asset transfer ever, when people start realizing that anybody who buys a Tesla, that car eventually in the future, when it does have robotaxi regulations in place that are going to be money on it, when that becomes a reality, that I think that that's enough. And I don't think it needs um, robotaxi regulations. I've been saying that just advanced safety. Now, I think the viral videos could be the smart summon and the reverse smart summon in the parking lots. That I think could be viral. So this is the idea that I go to Target and I get off, and then I drop me and my family off at the front, and then the car goes and finds its own parking spot. And then when I come out, it comes back. It can't be super slow like it has been with the
Yes,
previous Smart
yes.
Summon, and it's got to be much more. Just imagine that videos and people realizing that this car can do that. And in a parking lot, it's actually easier because you're not driving 60, 100 miles an hour. You can go sloop. You can slow down if you're surrounded by people, and then people can easily see that there's nobody in the car. They go, "What the hell?" You know. And so I tell you that I think that that's the moment that when that comes out, that could change the narrative. So, um, yeah, but I love your idea, the bots. And I agree with you that bots are going to come sooner than later, that it's going to be much more, uh, you know, it's going to be much faster than we all think. I think that I'm with you there, that the demonstrations of what it can do will be fast and furious. And then it can be
And
like, yeah.
once again, the average consumer out there,
Yeah.
might see a video about it, and they'll be like, "Oh boy, I would like to have that robot come and flip my eggs for me," and that's what people talk about a lot.
Mhm.
But I think in the early days, almost like you're talking about with, is that the investment community will recognize the useful capability in manufacturing or in whatever, construction, et cetera, all the things we've talked about, and be able to see the use cases right away. And then what's really amazing, and what I'm getting a lot of conversations coming back at me, is about the profitability, because it's not that hard. And I think, again, this is maybe why I think you'll start to see some stock movement based on excitement over Optimus, is because it is not hard at all to do the back of the napkin math of a product that's going to bring $200,000 a year in value,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what you can sell it for, and what it might cost. So when you start doing that back of the napkin value analysis, that that's something that Wall Street can do. That's something that they were doing when they were willing to give $100 billion valuation to Rivian, without a factory and without a working model. So to give Optimus $100 billion valuation right now would seem like a walk in the
Mhm.
park,
Yeah.
once you do the math. Once you do the math.
Yeah. Okay, let's let's slow down a little bit. I can hear a bunch of people right now saying, "Oh my God, here they are again talking about the bot and the energy and the robo taxi. These things are future, future, future. Look what happened to the stock in last year." It gets tiring. Honestly, I can see people going, "Gosh, here you are again, hoping your hopium and your thinking's going to happen." So let's step back a bit. Now, you and I both have said that some of these parts, like energy, is going to happen by the end of this year, $2 billion of profit. That's pretty well straight line from Lathrop's Megapack factory scale. We can also see the progress of FSD, and then that one is harder to nail down.
Mhm,
I'm not going to put a
mhm,
date to when that might happen. I agree. I think it's going to happen sooner or later, but it could be years. Absolutely true. Uh,
mhm.
but um, but then bots, that one, that one you and
And
I are
semi-truck,
saying,
and semi-truck,
and
and
semi-truck.
semi-truck.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
two are going to happen sooner and faster than everybody realizes, and like you say, can capture the imagination. But let's get back to your thesis, your investment thesis.
Mhm,
As a
mhm.
car company, I mean, did you buy Tesla stock because you were buying it for energy, FSD, for robots? But you bought it many years ago. What is your thesis? How do you view? Why did you decide Tesla was a good buy? And how do you see it today? Is it still a car company? Because obviously it's still being seen as a car company, regardless of everything we just said. It's still being valued and seen as a car company, first and foremost. That will change.
Yes.
That will
Yeah.
change. But right now, it still is.
Yeah. So I was told years ago that the number one way, if you're going to pick stocks,
Mhm.
the number one way you pick a stock is to like the product, to like the company, the management, but you got to start by liking the product. So I have no idea why I have never invested in Costco because, next to my cell phone is,
Yeah.
but anyway, I just didn't happen to, I guess the food company thing wasn't as exciting to me, but what products do you like? And then check out whether they're traded. And if they're traded, is there still an opportunity or is it already, is the opportunity already gone? So I basically, a friend of mine bought a Model S 5, 6 years ago, took me for a ride up and down the city streets at 800 miles an hour. and, and I'm a car guy and I love fast cars. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the craziest thing I've ever been in. And with the screen in the middle of the car and the minimalist interior. I mean, everything about it was just so futuristic. I think you know I was immediately taken by the product. So then the next step, once you know that you like the product, is okay, what's really going on with the company? So I started digging into the company and I looked at this Elon Musk guy and I'm going, oh, this guy is over the top. I mean, he's never fails. I mean, I hate to say that out
Mhm.
loud. I don't want to jinx anything, but he doesn't fail over and over again. So then I read Ashley's biography, and I'm reading the biography. I'm going, look at the way he thinks. And as an entrepreneur myself, and having multiple companies under my belt, little tiny companies under
Mhm.
my belt, I'm sitting there and I'm identifying with him. I'm going, oh yeah, look, he's doing this and he's doing that, but he's doing it writ large. He's doing it on a whole nother level, and he's doesn't miss. And he's got skill sets across this entire range, which is why I wrote the first book, The Elon Musk Method, 16 different skill sets that any entrepreneur should admire and try to follow. And it was like, no, the guy is amazing. And then what was part of the amazing part? How he was able to recruit the top talent. Because we talked about Andrew Carnegie earlier. Andrew Carnegie said, take away my bill. For those of you who don't know, he was a steel magnate, probably was the wealthiest man at the turn of from the 19th to the 20th century, and probably was the wealthiest man, maybe up to Elon, if you go back and take the values of what he owned at the time. But anyway, so Andrew Carnegie says, take away my buildings, take away my products, take away my companies, just give me this handful of people that I've
Mhm.
built, and I'll just build it all again. And that's been a theory of my entire life. I use that theory in all the companies I've built. And I looked at Elon, I'm going, oh my gosh, he's getting the top engineers from the top universities every single year. He has these methods, these technologies these approaches for getting these top people. When he actually had relationships with professors at different universities, where he would tell the professors, be on the lookout. Tell me about some talent that you see coming through. He was going out
Mhm.
proactively to the universities to recruit through the leading professors at these engineering universities. I mean, I looked at that stuff and I went, oh my gosh, there's no possibility that this isn't a stock that I should be involved in. So my investment thesis starts with loving the product, and then it goes to the management team, including the owner, and that's been enough. That's all. That's all it really took. And then, of course, you go into your risk reward thing, and that's where we are now, and that's where a lot of investors sit. They want low risk, and they want high potential reward. Who doesn't? Right? I mean, that's the perfect stock or the perfect investment. The lower the risk and the higher the reward. Well, right now in Tesla, you've got it's a Cinderella stock. It's no risk and the greatest potential reward in the history of businesses. I
Yeah.
mean, what's not to like?
There's a lot. Well, let's talk about what's not to like. Obviously, there are some that people view as what's not to like. But yeah, what I'd like to add to what you're saying is uh, is the market. So all of the things you just said, and then you look at the risk reward, and if you look at the market that the company that you want to invest in is addressing, if it's going to be a kind of like this growth market because it's a blue ocean, or even if it's a red ocean, if it's a growing market. Like it's undeniable. If you agreed that dumb phones are on the way out and smartphones are on the way in, if you agreed that streaming online is on the way in and rental of DVDs and or just the regular way to buy DVDs through the VHS and everything that was old, then you'd go into the new. Anytime you see a massive market like that, that is huge, then it's worth a bet, worth a bet, right? You gotta just think that that's going to be a bet. But so
Yeah,
here we are.
I did leave out one additional catalyst. It's kind of funny to call it a catalyst, but there was an additional catalyst to my investment thesis, and that was I watched Tony Seba.
Yeah,
And if anybody in your audience hasn't watched Tony Seba's videos, there's 5 of them now, I think, in 5 different marketplaces, 3 of which Tesla's in.
yeah,
Go back. They should go look at the newest 5 Tony Seba videos where he just shows what happens with a disruptive market. He shows that he's been studying disruption for, I don't know, 20 something years. He's been right over, sometimes too conservative in his estimates of how fast these S curves
mhm,
will go up once the S curve is hit. In particular, he was underestimated how fast the cost of batteries would come down.
yeah,
Um, so it's amazing how he hits it out of the park over and over again. So
yeah.
that was a part of my thesis.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the game. That's the game. Is looking at a market and seeing which ones you think is actually possible. And so here we are talking about the transition to electric vehicles. We're talking about the transition to robotaxi, the transition to sustainable energy with battery storage, and then and we're talking utilities, we're talking worldwide, right? And then you're talking about bots, and you're talking about
Labor,
AI,
small
and
market.
every one of these are massive, like the number one largest industry in the world, of which bots will eat all of them up, but every single one of these alone, and you've got them in one company. So that's the bet. So people consider that everything I just said, they consider that a lottery ticket. They call it a stock option, an option. So I bought Tesla because uh, it's a car company, and just the car company alone will succeed. But if one of these, and they kind of poo poo it, they go, oh yeah, maybe in the future, if it succeeds, that'll be great. Um, I don't see it that way. I know you're an Uber bull as well. So how do you like? Is it fair for people to think that any one of the things we just said here are still very much a lottery ticket, still very much in the future? How are you looking at that?
So there are all kinds of investors.
Yeah.
Okay, there are investors out there that didn't even put a dime into Rivian,
Yeah.
when it was worth 11 billion or 20 billion or 30 billion, and they missed out on the run to 100 billion. And then they missed out on the loss all the way back down to 12 or whatever it is now. Um, so there are investors that never play those kind of stocks. They want to be in really solid stocks, which have a known amount of payoff every year in terms of a dividend or buybacks or something. So they love Apple, they love stocks like that. So they love the Costco's that are growing and also going to do great in a recession. So show me the investor, and I'll tell you what he's thinking right now in terms of what you just said. But there's an investor out there that is like a tiny venture capitalist. He doesn't have enough money or enough guts to be a venture capitalist, but he'd like to be part of the venture capital thing where you bet on 10 companies and it only takes one of them to go crazy.
Mhm.
Well, gosh, when you're talking about Tesla, you can be a venture capitalist with one company where there's 10 possible things that could go nuts.
Mhm.
So that would be the kind of investor who would really be interested. But then with that's why I was making the point a minute ago. With the conservative investor, you look at him and you go, okay, the company's growing 50% a year and it has all this cash and no debt. So what's the risk?
Mhm.
This company it could go flat. It could have no growth for the next 2 years and still have 20, 30, $40 billion in cash in the bank by the end of that 2 years. It would have to really dramatically go down in both margins and sales in order to start eating into that 22 billion. And even then, it would take years and years and years to eat up
Mhm.
the 22 billion. So very, very low risk. Eh, Oh, not to mention you could borrow money. so,
Mhm.
so very low risk, and the potential reward is crazy. So for me, each of those potential massive gains, you look at them individually and you put a percentage opportunity on them. So FSD, is it 50-50 in the next year? Is it 70-30 in 3 years? Is it 90-10 in 5 years? What put your own risk analysis on it. And when do you think it happens? And each year, what is the likelihood? And if in your head you go, you know what, it's going to happen someday, I just don't know when, well, then why aren't you invested? Because if it's going to happen someday, then it's going to be a, it's going to be amazing, huge, huge numbers. Energy storage, we already see it. They've already built. They're building. Have one plant built, another plant that they already have announced, and we know they're going to announce more and more and more. What's the confusion here? We know it's going to be a ramp. What are the percentage chances that it will do 2 billion this year? What are the percentage chances it'll do 8 billion next year? What are the percentage chances it'll do 16 billion the next year? In profit, I'm talking about, not sales.
Mhm.
So analyze those chances and then analyze what the negative side of those chances are. How does that balance out? It seems to me it's a no-brainer. But each investor, again, has their different ways of doing these things, and they've never seen a company like Tesla before. The closest would have been General Electric. 20, whatever, 30 years ago, General Electric was, in all these different spaces. That's a pun. Anyway,
Sure.
they were in all these different industries, and they were growing like crazy in all of them. And they had one of the greatest geniuses of all time running the company, and all the smaller pieces were completely undervalued. So, we've seen this story before, but we now have a guy at the helm who's also a genius at PR and of communication, and so I suspect there will be a way to communicate all of this coming up shortly.
Okay, let's break this down into step by step, right? So Tesla is seen as a car company today, and look, we just said good, strong financial statements, balance sheet, cash, and all that. That's great. And everybody was very concerned, a lot of people for a long time, whether or not Tesla can produce these cars. Think that we're past that, right? We've got four factories, they're scaled, There's no more concern that you're going to be losing a ton of money or dying because you can't build the cars. And then there's the concern that the EV growth is stalling or not going to be there. We're past that. I think almost everyone now realizes EV is the future. Many countries, many cities have implemented laws that you need to be a certain percentage or all of it to be electric vehicles. Then there's a concern that competition's coming. I think there for Tesla, it's still confusing. I think the vast majority of people still believe competition's coming. They believe that these automakers, the OEMs, legacy will wipe. Eventually when they get the act together, they believe that there already are. You watch these video commercials everywhere. You really think that they're everywhere. Um, so what so that I think where we're at, right? That the auto business is being seen that Tesla's leading and they're succeeding and they're going to keep growing. Any comment about just the auto industry alone, just that before, and then I'll ask you something similar with the other industries. What will it
Yeah,
take for
to
people to start
yeah.
being much more confident in Tesla's opinion position here and start to really realize this is it? They're growing. They won the game and they're gonna keep just on electric vehicles alone.
Yeah, I think the best way, the simplest way, and it might be the hardest way, even though it's the simplest, because sometimes simplicity is the hardest thing to get across. If people believe the middle issue that you brought up, that the market is going 100% electric vehicles, BEVs,
Mhm.
if they believe that, and they believe that it's going to happen even by 2035, but better if they believe 2030, that it's going to be there by then it's pretty easy to, again, just do the math. You don't even have to be good at math to get it. It's going to take every company executing at great levels in order to produce enough BEVs between now and 2030 to be able to satisfy the marketplace. So if they understand the S curve, if they can see what's happening in the Netherlands, see what's happening in China, see the report that just came out the other day, that's another poll that came out the other day that said 78% of Americans will consider a BEV for their next car purchase. Those who are interested in buying a car, 78%, and this was a good sized survey, are interested in a BEV at this point. 22% they will never buy one. And the number one reason against buying one was still price. So that is not communicated yet that the price parity has been reached. So if people get that, they have to get that part first, I think, to then go, oh my gosh, Tesla's going to they're going to sell as many of these cars as they can possibly make with multiple
Yeah.
factories coming on board.
Yeah, my thinking is the price parity. That is the biggest confusion people have. They think that it's still very, very expensive. And as soon as, that message comes across that Teslas or other EVs, which they're not, but if Tesla's price is cheaper, regardless of the incentive from the IRA, and forget the long-term, lifetime value of the car, just straight off the parking lot price. If it's cheaper, then it's over at that point. Everybody will realize it. And then at that point, whether or not, so the other, for investors, one of the things that my friends, I had to point out to them that it doesn't matter if the competition comes. It's like Apple and Samsung. You can have Samsung controlling 85% of the market, Apple only 15, and yet Apple is now the largest company in the world. Same thing will happen with Tesla. But those are the two things I think that needs to happen for auto. Okay, so let's talk about the other ones. So, what will it take for Tesla to be seen as an energy company? And therefore, the PE ratio is re rated. In my mind, I'll just answer it, which is the end of this year, Martin Viecha said that the energy is going to be reported. And so we're going to start seeing numbers of volume, production, and delivery, as well as margins. And that right away will automatically change the narrative for Tesla being just a car company. They're car and energy. Now people will compare, well, it's such a small revenue. It needs to hit over 5%, I think, before they'll do that. What's your thinking of what will it take before people start seeing Tesla not just a car company, but an energy company as well?
But let me go back, I'm sorry, to the Apple analogy.
Yeah.
Even though Apple was making hand over fist with the app stores, it took 3 years.
Mhm.
Took 3 years. It just wasn't sexy. People didn't get it. What is an app store? Why do we believe that there's going to be millions of apps in the future that are paying Apple all this money? They didn't get it. It took 3 years for the even the investment community to really get it. And it drove me nuts every year watching just like it
Mhm.
drives us nuts now to watch the Tesla meetings, to watch the Apple meetings, and all these things being demoed. And you're like, oh my gosh, the stock should be on the moon, and it wasn't because they didn't get it. So yeah, I think it's going to be harder for energy to get to that place. That's why I'm saying I'm looking more at the robots, maybe at AI in some format that might be sexier, might be like more top of mind, something that people will get, or FSD, of course, and maybe the semi truck. Semi trucks are not nearly as sexy as cars because everybody doesn't drive one, but there might be a good enough story to tell there. It might be, there might be some movies done about it or something, with the because there is a romanticism to the truck driver out there. So yes, I
Mm.
could see where if they do build 40,000 semi trucks in 2024, or if they don't quite make that number in 2024, but in 2025 they do 50 or 60, there's going to be a point at which people are going to say, "Oh my gosh, this is a serious, huge business." But I think it might take the robots, it might take Optimus before it really shifts the thinking. And of course, I think that's going to happen next week. So,
Yeah. Well, so
so
yeah, so I don't put a lot of credence on the semi. As you know, you're very excited about semi. I'm not, and I think most people are not. Even if it proves to be a big business, it'll take a long time. It's still seen as part of a vehicle. However, I will say that the Cybertruck, of course, I think that's going to change the narrative because the Cybertruck is going to be not just a vehicle. I think it's going to be seen like first of all, revolutionary, totally different approach, but that it's full of technology. And if it does come with a lot of technology, just the fact that the Cybertruck can float, let's say, and then people see this thing as actually a half
and the
boat,
wheels
half
and the
car,
wheels
yeah,
going up.
doing that kind of stuff, that it then changes Tesla being seen not just a car company but a tech company. And then that's where the first leg up, that this company is a tech company that happens to be in auto industry, and therefore they can build other things. So that one I'm very excited about. And then
It'll also,
yeah,
it'll also be it's also a walking or a driving billboard. So
yeah,
everywhere it goes, everybody's going to know what it is, and everybody will be talking about it. Yeah.
yeah. And then like we said, something needs to happen for AI, robotaxi, for dojo, for energy, and bots. And the great news. And I think this is the real reason why the stock is rising right now. And I think that why I'm very bullish again. It's Elon saying that I'm going to be back at Tesla. I've got a new CEO for Twitter. I'm going to be focused. And there's that feeling that he was shocked how quickly ChatGPT took off. It scared him, and so now he is like doubling down and saying, this is very thorny. I need to work on it. I'm going to be in Tesla making this happen. And so, what it will do is it will change the narrative as simple as Elon starting to talk about it. If he starts to convince people, just, like he has been with Robotaxi, but actually, if he's showing like things that Tesla's able to do that isn't AI, just communicating what they're doing, people don't even realize. They don't know the supercomputer that Tesla has, the neural nets that they're doing, and all the top people in AI working there for years. So if he just hammers that home a bit, then they'll be considered an AI company, and
Mhm.
then that will happen right there. So, any last thoughts in this conversation?
It's a last thought, but I think it needs to be said, and it kind of goes back to the earlier conversation. The other thing that has to happen before Tesla stock will really catch fire and go back
It's
to
macro,
all-time
of
highs
course.
and pass them is the macro.
Of
If
course.
we don't get the macro, when the
Yeah.
macro, you got to have the macro
Yeah.
too. It's just not going to happen without it.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. We'll be accused of it's the macro. It's the macro. It's the macro. This is a growth company. It's a beta company. No amount of good news will move the stock if you have a bad macro. So that has to turn. And if it starts turning, then off we go in the races. And this will be the first. This will be the first company to rise. Maybe, maybe not the number one, but it's like next to Apple. I've always said I'm a long-term Apple investor, and I've always said and proven, Apple's the last to fall and the first to rise during economic downturns. Why? Because of a strong balance sheet, because of a strong product and a huge market. And yet it's a story stock. So it's very, very volatile, but Tesla is even like doubly volatile. So
Maybe
it
4
will
times.
skyrocket once people are feeling safe again. And then by that point, they'll even, like you said, Tesla's a safe investment. Fantastic, Randy. I appreciate your coverage of your thesis of investment. You're very bullish. So that, you're more bullish than me. I kind of try to bring you back down, but we have a lot that we agree on in terms of, the people are seeing things differently of what Tesla is. And that's an investor. An investor is somebody who sees something that others aren't, and you're trying to get ahead of the game. And as a bull, we might be too far ahead. That I give to people. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. That part, it's hard for people to argue that one, debate that one.
Yes. True.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Randy. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, it's been great.
Bye.